I think all of Canada should unite in saying, fuck Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a piece of shit country, and right now they're pissed off at us because apparently we've insulted their feelings by Canada's foreign affairs minister putting out a tweet saying how they didn't like how they were treating their protesters. Apparently right now Saudi Arabia is pissed off enough to pull all trade with Canada, recall all citizens from Canada, and kick out the Canadian ambassador. So why don't we all as Canadians just unite in saying, fuck Saudi Arabia? This whole situation ended up starting with this. So we've already been hearing a lot about how Raif Badawi has been arrested. He's been in prison for some time in a Saudi jail. And now, most recently, Samar Badawi, who has been campaigning for Saudi Arabia's guardianship rules, she ended up getting arrested. So then Canada ended up putting this out, the foreign policy, put out saying, Canada is gravely concerned about additional arrests of civil society and women's rights activists in Saudi Arabia, including Samar Badawi. We urge the Saudi authorities to immediately release them and all other peaceful human rights activists. This ended coming out on August 3rd. And this is when the times that the Saudi Arabians were getting pissed off about this. To the point where they put out this. Oh wait, not that. It was, where is it? Is it right here? Here it is. Sticking one's nose where it doesn't belong. As the Arabic saying goes, he who interferes with what doesn't concern him finds what doesn't please him. Now, what we're seeing right here is what appears to be a 9/11 style attack on Toronto, the CN Tower. Let's not forget that the Saudis funded the 9/11 attack. So it can be taken as a very serious threat against Canada. I mean, now this wasn't actually put out by the Saudi government. This actually came from it was a non-profit organization, I think, but this group is closely associated with the Saudi government. So, and they pretty much agree with whatever the Saudis say. So we might as well take this as if it's coming from the Crown Prince himself and the Saudi royal family, who they themselves are just pieces of shit, terrible human beings, absolute horrendous human beings. And this is the sort of country that they live in. So they've taken now to release a bunch of propaganda against Canada. I mean, there's some things that they could definitely point to when we're talking about problems in Canada, and they'll be absolutely right. Oops. But this ended up coming out recently. And it was saying, since last night, which was August 7th, so this was yesterday, Saudi authorities give their students in Canada 1 month to leave Canada. Saudi foreign minister saying that now Saudi Arabia has a right to interfere in Canadian affairs. Saudi-owned media calling out Canadians' human rights record. Now, the first things first, like, in what way are they talking about interfering in Canadian affairs? Just putting out their messages saying that they condemn something? Fine, go ahead. I think it's the right of every country to be able to put out their... I think it's the right of every country to be able to put out these sort of messages and say if you condemn or support somebody. But the way they're talking about it seems like they want a more active role involved in Canadian affairs, as if they're actually going to properly interfere with our affairs. And if that's what they mean, then we're talking about subversion from a foreign power, and that is a... You're getting along the point that that's almost war right there. Now, I'm not calling for war, but that is, in a way, an act of war if you're going to have an attempt to interfere in Canadian affairs. Now, if you just want to put out your own press statements talking about this, fine. Do whatever the fuck you want. But right now, I really don't give a shit. I think it's time to end any sort of relationship with Saudi Arabia. They have a terrible human rights record. That's not something that we should support. We don't need their oil. This has already been confirmed. I mean, economists are saying Canada could easily replace Saudi Arabian crude oil imports, so we don't need their oil. And we even have here, which is Canada oil imports by country supplier 2007-2017. When we're importing them, most of it is coming from the United States anyway. So there's really no need for any of us to take any part in Saudi Arabia. This is the only thing that they do. The only reason that they even power right now is because of their oil. If everyone was to stop taking oil from the Saudis, they would be back to riding camels. That's all they would fucking have. They would have nothing. Well, the Saudi royal family would have some money for a while because they're rich as fuck, but like this would be a complete destruction of their economy, and I think absolutely we should take them up on that. So then now when this is going through, they're starting to talk about the Saudis owned Al Arabia is calling out Canada's persecution of prisoners of conscience, pointing out the case of Holocaust denier and Nazi sympathizer Ernst Zundel, who hasn't been in Canada since extradition to Germany in 2005. He also died last year. The same Saudi-owned channels are running reports about how Canada needs to improve its prison system and bring them up to international human rights standards. That is a stretch coming from the Saudis when they're talking about their prison system. Let's see. Saudi government-friendly influencers are on about Canada's human rights violation, including ethnic cleansing, homelessness, and murdered women or something. Now, he's clearly making reference to the missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is a problem in Canada. But once again, I question how much of that goes on in Saudi Arabia as well. They're talking about ethnic cleansing, are they again talking about the Indigenous problem in Canada? Where's their diversity? Where's their groups of people? That's probably because the Saudis have already kicked them all out, if not murdered them themselves. And then these experts that they're showing on their TV, the full propaganda is just saying Canada threats its native population like Myanmar treats the Rohingya. No, Myanmar is currently murdering the Muslim Rohingyas, so I don't think you can make that statement that we treat them the same way. And it has the highest suicide rate. Okay, then. We're being accused by the Saudis of supporting terrorism. They literally funded the 9/11 attacks, and I think at least half of the people who committed of the 19 hijackers on that day were Saudi Arabian. They are the biggest supporter of terrorism in the Middle East. They are the worst fucking nation on this fucking planet. Saudi Arabia is very worried about Native Americans and is championing the Quebec independence movement. You could have tried something a little more recent if you wanted to do that. The Quebec independence movement is more or less dead right now. The support for separation is at an all-time low and it is continuing to drop, so you could have tried something a little better than that. We have the world's highest rates of persecution of women. Once again, coming from the Saudi government. This is just huge propaganda right now. In fact, I think it was in 2015 or 2016, Canada was named the #1 country to live in if you were a woman. So that is complete bullshit. And then we're talking about prisoners of conscience such as Jordan B. Peterson and Dennis Rancourt, who are arrested due to their political beliefs. That's fucking hilarious. And they may get their criticism, but none of them are even close to getting arrested. In fact, even somewhere down there, Dennis Rancourt ends up replying to this thread and is just like, wow, this is news to me. But they're not the only ones. They also go off to name several others. Danny Morris, Mary Wagner, and Linda Gibbons. And they're trying to say that these are prisoners of conscience. This Canadian human rights violation infographic by Saudi Arabia, Al Arabia, says 75% of prisoners died before their trial between 2015 and 2017. This is absolutely ridiculous. And then they keep going on and on and on about this whole thing. It says, Saudi Arabia is full of talented, intelligent women and men, but they're either silenced, jailed, exiled, or locked out of their country's decision-making. This thread says nothing about the caliber of Saudi people, but it says a lot about the nature of tyranny. Absolutely. But you know what? I'm pretty done. I don't even give a fuck whether this has to do with the Saudi people or not. You know what? Take your people and import them back to your country. You're already doing that. You're also having your medical patients moved from Canada back into Saudi Arabia. So go ahead, take them all. We don't need you and your piece of shit country anyway. We don't need Saudi Arabia. fuck Saudi Arabia. I could care less about Saudi Arabia. And the thing is, too, about this whole situation is we're not getting any support from the U.S. on this. Now, this is a bit of a fault of our own part and a bit of a fault of the U.S. See, first of all, the Americans aren't supporting Canada on this. They're sort of saying, you have to figure this out for yourself. One of the problems with that is because Justin Trudeau has been terrible at relationships with the U.S. So why are they going to come to our support now? Well, we were never there to support them during the last couple of years since Trump has come into office. In fact, Justin Trudeau has taken every single opportunity in order to take shots at Trump. So, and to play up on the whole Russia hacked the elections situation. So of course they're not going to come to our support for that. The other reason is because why would Trump and the Americans turn on their cash cow right now? Let's not forget, just a year ago, they made a sale of, I think it was something like $200 billion of weapons, the largest in world history of sale of weapons to the Saudi Arabians. And now those weapons are being used in Yemen. And that's why we have a humanitarian crisis in there. That's why children are starving in Yemen. But why would Donald Trump turn on cash cow? He's already shown his support for the Saudi Arabians, which I can't believe considering how they were responsible for the 9/11 terrorist attack. That is confirmed now that the funding that the Saudi government, the Saudi royal family provided is what led to like 3,000 people dying on that day and the planes getting driven into the Twin Towers. The fact that we had 3 towers fall that day on September 11th, 2001 is due to Saudi Arabia. But for some reason, Trump is a big supporter of Saudi Arabia, which I seriously don't understand why. They should be one of the biggest enemies to America right now, but apparently that's not the case. So those are the really 2 reasons. But I think all Canada should rise up and say, fuck Saudi Arabia. Screw Saudi Arabia. Go back to your desert. We don't give a fuck about you guys. And the thing is, too, is there's some people out there that are being critical of that the Canadian government never should have jumped into this situation. Like, we got our own problems at home. Yeah, we do have our own problems at home. But this happens all the time from nations all around the world that we condemn something that they do. We could put out a statement, like not just us, but every single country. We put out a statement saying we condemn how this country is doing this. We condemn this country does that. It's actually a very normal part of politics. So, sure, maybe we should mind a little bit more of our own business, but we're talking about it was the most basic thing you could do. It was like literally the smallest thing you could do. You just put out a statement saying your government doesn't like this. So, in the end, it's not like we were trying to get involved, putting our military over there in order to stop them from trying to break them out of prison or anything like that. We weren't really influencing that much. We just put out a public statement. It is literally the most limited thing you can do. So to me, this is not an acceptable argument that they say like, oh, we should just mind our own business. Like, sure, we should, but politics is more than just looking after your own than just staying within your borders. You do have to pay attention to geopolitics, and if something is going on, then condemn it. This is not the first time the Canadian government has done this. This is not the first time any government has done this. But anyway, their response to this whole situation has been unacceptable. That tweet, which was taken down of the Air Canada flight heading into the CN Tower, should be taken as a very serious threat by the Saudi Arabians. Considering how they have done this before, they've allowed this to happen before, and now they're threatening it again. Even if it didn't come directly from the Saudi government, it was still an affiliated group. So that should say enough about it. So once again, I say, fuck Saudi Arabia, fuck the House of Saud, and we should be done with them. Done with their oil imports, done with everything. Let them kick out the Canadian ambassador. We should kick out all their ambassadors and wipe our hands clean of this piece of shit country.